What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale, coming at you with the one, the only, the best co-host in the podcasting business, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are a month into the NBA season officially when this is dropping. This is 1 month since the NBA season, or 1 month and a day since it opened, the 22nd, when you'll be listening to this. It's time for some burning questions that Grant and I just have to get off our chest, not our bare chests, because we don't want to embarrass anyone else out there, so we are both wearing shirts. But we've got a handful of questions, and we will take turns deciding which direction we're going to take them, that we just think are going to be important to clock for the rest of the year. Some of them are micro, dealing with a specific team. A lot of them are more macro, though, about things that are happening around the league, situations that we're really going to be tracking moving forward. Our first burning question, though, Grant, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. I should have used all that time to come up with something more pithy to say, but I'll turn it back on you because today's going to be a dialogue, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. This is one of my favorite type of exercises to do, where we get to bounce around to a bunch of different subjects where there's some micro implications, but there's macro implications as well. I'm just curious because we did build like our pool of questions that we will call from together. What makes a burning question for you? What is it? Is it more so, oh, this team is shocking or disappointing me in some huge way? Or is it, this thing is happening, or this combination of things is happening, and how does that change the competitive landscape in the sense of, oh, is this team going to make a big move, or is this team suddenly a championship contender? What makes a burning question for Mr. Grant Hughes?
I think it's one that has a little bit of a tail to it. That's probably not the right word, but something where, okay, so we get an answer to this question, and then there's a very consequential, like, so what, that kind of comes after it. And that so what can touch on, like you said, maybe there's a trade to be made related to this, the answer we arrive at, if we arrive at an answer, which knowing me, usually I just end up with more questions, or it's going to impact who's going to make the top four in either conference, or it's going to impact, probably not a player's legacy necessarily, but there's got to be like some kind of, okay, so we got a handle on the basic question, and then it gives rise to several others that are going to have some kind of say in what happens the rest of the way this season. It's not just like a who's the best at this, or like rank this team, or you know what I mean? There's got to be some kind of, okay, so we got that handled. So now we have like, so what is the impact of that down the line? That, I don't know, like it's got a longer reach than other questions. Like, it's kind of what makes it a burning question to me.
I'm pretty bummed because I thought this was just going to be legacy rankings based on this season, but I guess
do that. We can pivot. That's fine.
I'm going to be super generous again. Just the charitable nature of my existence it's beyond compare, and I'm going to give you the first selection. Where do you want to take us?
Yeah, I'm going to start at the beginning of the alphabet, just because that happens to be one of the things we do.
The Utah Jazz. Let's do it.
Let's talk Atlanta Hawks. And the question is, I'm got some version of, are the Hawks better without Trae Young? Now, this is not a new question, but because Young's place with the Hawks and really his place in the league and sort of what we make of him and his impact on a team have kind of been at issue for almost his whole career, just because of the extremes that teams led by him tend to embrace. The reason it's relevant now is because Trae Young's out with a knee injury and has been since the end of October, and the Hawks have played differently, have in some respects been better, in some respects worse. And so we just have a little bit of a sample now to kind of look at and try to figure out, what is this team without Trae Young? Because we have a pretty good idea of what it has been with him. So just to kind of throw some numbers out before some numbers and some observations out before we kind of start to try to tackle this. Young went down with a knee sprain against the Nets on October 29th. The Hawks win that game and then go 7-4 over their next 11. So that's essentially their record without him. Nothing spectacular, and you might say, like, well, that's roughly in line with where we thought the Hawks would be with a healthy Trae Young this season. Like, that's a 4th, 5th, 6th-ish best record in the East kind of pace. That's what we thought this team might do. It's relevant because now these stats do not include the most recent Hawks games because cleaning the glass went down this morning, and they're all updated as of last night, so deal with it. Young's on-off is a -15 this season. The Hawks' net rating is better significantly without him. That's all defense. Their defensive rating is plus 15.5 with Young on the floor, meaning it's 15.5 points worse per 100. These have all normalized a little bit because the Hawks lost their most recent game. Still, they'll give you a sense of sort of what we're dealing with sans Young. Atlanta's two best lineups without him, which just to get the principles kind of in order here, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Shea, Jalen Johnson, and then with Porzingis at the 5, plus 13.1, the offensive rating is 124.1. Put a Kongwu in there for Porzingis, who's actually like just as on the same footing now as a three-point shooter, which seems relevant to Porzingis, plus 32.8. 150 offensive rating. These are all going to be lower after the game against the Spurs, but still. So since Trae left or went out, the Hawks have really only had like 2 really bad offensive games, which is where you'd expect the kind of degradation of performance to come. You know, you remove this guy that is your offense, you're going to suffer there. They've had 7 with an offensive rating of at least 121 points per 100. So like that's more than sufficient. However, and the defense has been better, obviously. That's just like they've had much more high turnover nights just because you take Young off the floor and it's basically been Alexander Walker. Your defensive results are going to be better. They're turning it over more. They've been susceptible to pressure. Cleveland really was the first to kind of expose that. This is now almost 2 weeks ago we're talking about, but I don't know if you remember that game, but like the Hawks looked really good without Young for a couple, and then exactly the type of issues you'd expect arose where they can't get the ball over half court. They get it over and the offense stalls because nobody knows who's supposed to be doing anything. Alexander Walker and Jalen Johnson have been very, very good for like what they've been up to this point as initiators of that offense. I'm not 100% so. Actually, I know I'm not sold on one or the other of them being good enough to be just this is the guy that runs the show all the time. This is an alpha. I think they're both like maybe luxuries as like secondary guys, but even as much as Johnson has improved and as like Alexander Walker had 38 against the Spurs last night as we're recording this and looked incredible. Their struggles were turnovers, gummed up offense occasionally. Like both of those guys are great at what they do. They're not replicating what Young did as sort of a be all end all. So that kind of gets to the next look at this because we're still dealing in small samples. And the question that we need to tackle is the Hawks can't be better without Young. They can be different. But like if you just take what is the baseline we're working from? How good have they been with Trae as like the alpha? And what does that mean? So just before we kind of answer the ultimate question, last year with Young on the floor, all the on-off swings, this is a little bit of a Jokic thing, are huge with Young because he makes the offense really good. But and we've talked about this with LaMelo, like he makes the offense this much better. Well, but how good is the offense in raw terms? Is that actually good? Is better good? 43 win pace last year with Young on the floor. 35 win pace in 23-24 with Young on the floor. 45 win pace plus 1.3 in 22-23 with Young on the floor. Go farther back, you get a 47 win and a 53 win way back in 2021, and then a 29 win pace in 19-20. So there's 150 win pace in there. There's a 30, there's some mid 40s. That's where you are with Trae Young. So I think if this is as good as it gets, if that's what you were with Trae Young leading the team, low to mid 40s, let's say on balance, with him on the court, why would you continue to make him a singular figure, a guy you might max on an extension, as opposed to looking at what you have with this younger, more athletic, more balanced core, right? Because so I'll just ask you, is that pace, is that level of production with Young as the alpha, and we can talk about why this is an unfair question in a second, is that good enough to justify, no, we're still built around Trae Young, we're not trading him, we are going to pay him on an extension and continue to be oriented around him?
No, it's not. But it's also, you kind of have to look at it through the lens of maybe it's not about giving him a max contract then. If it's to go into free agency or he declines the player option, okay, we're going to throw you the 4-year max, the 5-year max here, then yes, it's a discussion. But I don't think the pace at which their offense is played in many of these lineups without Trae Young is going to prove sustainable over the longer term. And I didn't see their Spurs game, but I saw the Pistons game, and you know what they lacked? Kind of down the stretch of that game, it was their offense. Like, you could just see that it's going to eventually get clunky without Trae. And I understand that we're now veering into territory of, I'll say myself specifically, Dan said this last year too, but like Trae Young shooting under 20% from three, this is just, we have not seen the best version of Trae Young yet. And so I think what I'm more open-minded to is that unless you think that Trae, this is Trae right now, the Trae that you watched before his knee injury, that this is the new version of Trae Young, you have to let this play out because, one, what is the alternative? To move him and do what? You're not moving Trae Young and getting better, because if you're moving Trae Young now, teams are going to know, one, why you're moving him, and you're also moving him at a time when there's not a bunch of years left on his contract. He hasn't played his best basketball over the past year and change, I suppose. So what are you actually getting for him? And then if you're, it's tough to build, maybe impossible to build, just an elite defense around Trae Young, even if you want to point, well, like, he's tried hard during the, okay, great. Like, it's still going to be super hard. I still think it's going to be harder I don't look at Jalen Johnson. I don't look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I don't look at anybody else on this roster and think they can shoulder the level of playmaking burden that, for everyone else, that Trae Young is always going to shoulder. I do also recognize, though, the fact that they've been better offensively this year with him off the court is problematic, but also speaks to, I think, a couple things. A lot of those units are going to be secondary units that you get to go up against in the first place, and I think that's a testament to Atlanta's depth. And then how many times have you heard coaches, even just the really smart X's and O's analysts, say teams sometimes are just harder to scout without their best players?
Yes. I was just going to say, like, there's some element of teams have prepared to play the Hawks one way for as long as Young has been there, and maybe they're just catching opponents unaware, at least early on, because it's like, well, who do we even focus on, right, as a defense? I want to ask you, though, the reason the question I posed is unfair, which is like, you know, if this is as good as it gets, why would you continue to feature Trae? It's unfair because, like, it's kind of a false choice. Like, why couldn't you embrace all this new talent, all Jalen Johnson's growth, Alexander Walker's obvious fitness for like a slightly scaled up role, Okongwu's new shooting? Why can't you have Trae Young with all that, right? Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be Young and we play this way, or these other guys and we play another way. Like, in an ideal world, you have everything. You have all these other secondary creators that are slotted into probably more appropriate roles for their skill sets behind Young as the number one. But that, though, gets to kind of the core philosophical question here, which is it possible for him to be additive to a new identity for this Hawks team? Or is Trae one of those kinds of players that I fixate on constantly? I think this is Monte Ellis scar tissue from going on 20 years ago now. Is he someone that can only be the player around whom your team's identity is built? Can he only be that? Or can you scale down, scale up is kind of the wrong terminology. Additive is what I like. Can he be an additive piece to what you're doing as opposed to the thing that defines it? And what do you think? Like, is Trae Young only, can you only use him one way? Or can he be part of a more collective group?
I watch him and think that he can be part of more of a collective group. And you see, even last year, more things happening with him away from the ball. But I do constantly come back to the fact that it never feels like it's upticked in a way that we even saw with Luka. Let's use Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving as an example. Those two together, the sample size isn't the largest, but like Luka played when he wasn't injured off the ball more. He was able to play faster more. And I think we've seen Trae at least up the speed. Like, that hasn't really been an issue, but there's never been what feels like more of a wholesale shift. But then what I constantly come back to the fact is, well, is there someone they've had that is good enough to justify making that wholesale shift? And I'm open to, well, I'm not open. I would say, well, Jalen Johnson, idiot. That's the answer. Awesome. How many games has Jalen Johnson missed over the past few years.
Sure.
And so creating that dynamic, I wonder if there's been sort of some shifting floors below that. I think, shocker, I do land where you kind of do, where I don't think this team currently, I don't think they're better off without Trae Young. I think that they would maybe during the regular season, they might be fun, but there's also other guys on this team. Yeah, Trae Young hasn't maybe had his healthiest run of basketball. He was dealing with Achilles stuff last year. But what are we, Kristaps Porzingis, hardly a billboard for good health. Jalen Johnson, like he's ended up missing time over the past few years. To me, it feels without Trae Young that the offense, even if you like the aesthetics better, even if you think the way they're playing is freer, just overall better, it's more House of Cardsy than an off. Like you have a higher floor, I think, with Trae Young and all his flaws. I do think that kind of answers the question of, well, do you trade him or should you be shopping him right now? But it makes it harder to evaluate. It still does make it harder to all the points that you made. He has a player option for next season. What are you doing with that? At this point, no, I'm not maxing him out. But if you're Trae Young and the Spurs gave De'Aaron Fox the no muss, no fuss max, he barely played for them, barely played alongside Victor Wembanyama, and they gave it to him. I'm sure he's going to be expecting something similar. And I will say, there's no scenario in which he goes into Atlanta next year on an expiring contract, right? Where he exercises that player option is still on the Hawks.
It's hard. It seems very unlikely, right? I think, however, I think if I'm the Hawks, I think if I'm the Hawks, I would prefer that to a rubber stamped max extension. I just think because as the Hawks, my vision of the next 5 years is not us playing the same way we have with Trae Young over the last 5+. Like what I want is a version of Young that is not dominating the ball quite as much as he is, that is more a piece of what we do than the thing that dictates everything. Like I want to pay him that way, not as the guy that there are certain like high usage on ball superstars that are good enough to max out and you just fit everything around them. That's a really short list, and it's all NBA guys, top 10 guys, right? And I don't think anyone would argue Young is at that level. And so to me, if he's not willing to be compensated like someone who can dominate a game for us night to night, but our goal is not for that to be how we survive or fail. I want to pay him like that. The other thing we need to think about, and I would ask you this, is for purposes of long-term planning and for purposes of answering the what do we do with Trae Young question from Atlanta's perspective, how much is the high likelihood of you drafting the next alpha with the New Orleans Pelicans pick this coming June affecting your thinking?
Oh,
let's say it's AJ DeBanza or Drew. Let's just say you pick first. You're gonna get someone in theory that you will orient your franchise around, and you have a young enough complementary core, Porzingis accepted, to just reorient. Or it's we lost an alpha that could get us to play at a 43-win pace. New guy in town. That's
still a decision, though, that you would then, the Trae Young stuff, you're still waiting to address it until the offseason then, right? Because you don't know.
Yes, but it's got to impact it, right? It's got to impact it.
I think it certainly impacts it, but doesn't it sort of support the idea that if you are going that direction, this isn't the Hawks are immediately getting better without Trae Young. This is they've decided to reset. And if that's the goal, if what you said all at the top of it or at the close of your opening monologue of it, saying, this has been their ceiling, basically. They made the conference finals that one year, but this has sort of been their ceiling. If they sit there and they decide mid-40s, maybe contending for a top 4 spot in the East, never getting back to the conference finals, we're not into that for the next half decade. You're then actively deciding, that's fine. Again, I would support that decision if you're going to go through, it doesn't have to be a tear down where you trade everyone, but you're looking to reorient for the longer game around that Pelicans pick, Jalen Johnson, Reese Shea maybe. And by the way, sort of the unspoken part of all this is that Dyson Daniels just has not been good offensively to me.
He was so bad against the Spurs in that game.
he just can't under like 35% on drives this year. And it's honestly, I would argue it's borderline inexcusable because when you look at Okongwu, like how many minutes are the Hawks playing with a stretch big?
Almost all of them.
Yes. And so that's, we're not sitting here going, well, should they have not given him that extension that they gave him? So I feel like Trae is just this frequent pariah and deserves it to some extent. But I would, on this issue, I would wind up saying, if you think you're better off without Trae Young, it's because you want to hit the reset button. I think if the Hawks want to make the most of this season, they need Trae Young. They need him to be better, certainly from his own efficiency perspective. But if it's not him, who is just in the half court are you trusting to generate shots for others at the rim like he can?
Here's the thing. There is a scenario to me where Jalen Johnson at this time next year is at a level where you're a better team built around him than you are around Trae Young. I don't know. I don't think he's there yet, but I think Johnson has shown enough growth. And again, the health question might just decide the issue with him and has been part of the problem so far. But the way he's progressed and some of the flashes that he does show as like getting to, just to invoke like a very unfair comparison, getting to almost like a Cade Cunningham level, like I'm not closing the door on that at all with him. But I am saying he's not there yet. So there's to me, this is this is obviously sort of a deliberately sensational kind of question. It's to like spur a discussion, right? Are the Hawks better without Trae Young? There's so many nuances that go into this. I think I agree with you that the answer at the moment is probably not. I think longer term, I would disagree a little bit that if you move on from Trae Young, I don't think it's necessarily a reset. I think we believe in the other guys getting better, Johnson in particular, and we believe in our ability to maybe get another core piece through this upcoming draft that lifts us to a higher level. Having said all that, I really want to see when Young is back, can he fit into what's happening here? And can there be a balance between the way he's played throughout his career and the extremes that has created? Can you balance that with like what should be a good defense and what should be like a pretty egalitarian offense, or certainly could be like Alexander Walker as your third option? Like that's a scary offense, right? Talk about not knowing how to tackle that as a defense. So I would like to see if the Hawks can kind of have it all, once Young is back and up to speed and integrated, before I really conclude like, nope, we topped out with Trae, we got to take another path.
Yeah, I didn't ask this to you after you asked it to me. Do you think he's capable of fitting in to this type of ecosystem? I'm not worried. I'm really not worried about the speed. They got out in transition so much more last year with him. But I'm just curious, it's not will he, do you think that he is, looking at what he's able to do or how you've seen him play, do you think that he is capable?
Isn't this ultimately the core question here? I think we sort of arrived at it. And so this was actually going to be my bonus philosophical question. So I'm glad you got to it independently. I have a hard time separating sort of my preferences about how basketball should be played, like to my aesthetic eye. Like I didn't enjoy the James Harden Rockets all that much because it was just one dude doing all this stuff and everybody else depended on him, and it worked really well. That team could have won a title if you just plopped it into some random year. The Luka Mavericks, acknowledge his greatness, don't love watching it. Same with Trae to a lesser extent. I don't, and maybe like my personal aesthetic preferences and just like basketball philosophies are bleeding
They're
into,
gospel as far as I'm concerned.
But you know what I mean? Like it's bleeding into my answer to this question, which is like, I would like to see it. I just think there are certain guys that they play a certain way and you got to build the team around them in a certain way. And if you try to mess with that, one, they get pissed off and don't like it and maybe want to leave, or two, they just can't. And Young is such an extreme version of this because he is small. He cannot guard. He's never shown a sustained ability to play off the ball and to like be a connective guy. His whole career, collegiate, professional, has been just the be-all, end-all for his team's offense. And maybe he can. I'm skeptical that he can be part of like just a more collective thing in Atlanta. And I don't even know if you're maximizing his value that way. That's the hang up with all of this is like, to get the absolute best out of Young and your team with him on it, I think you play a certain way. And that's because he's not good at so many other things you would need like a more complementary guy to be good at. So that my answer is like, I guess I'm skeptical that you can integrate Young and sort of have it both ways. What do you think?
I think he's capable. I don't know if he's going to. And I also think part of that is now that you have Jalen Johnson, it's less. I just don't like this. This feels like the season. If Jalen Johnson's healthy, you have all this space in the front line. You have your minutes independent of Dyson Daniels. Like, this is the season that it would be. I think the bigger question for me might be, what is, even with that version of Trae Young, do you think, this is my bigger question, is do you think that the defense can ever be good enough to win at the highest level? And that's, I mean, they're as close as you can get to feeling like they have enough personnel to do that.
Right. I think it's easier now than it's been in a very long time to put together a really great defense with a player like Young involved in it. Teams are better at hiding guys like that than they've ever been. There's more zone being played than there's been in a very long time. You're just in your set defense a lot less this year than you've ever been. So, like, maybe the damage is mitigated because you're not going against half-court sets. I don't know. I think it's possible. It's funny, like, my hang-ups and my reservations about the Hawks, like, almost come more. The defense is like, yeah, that's an issue for sure. It's been for his whole career. I'm just more concerned with, like, what kind of team are we? Like, are we just built around this guy and everybody else is diminished because of it? Or can we be a collective? Like, that doesn't have as much to do with defense as maybe what you're asking.
No, it doesn't. I think what you're saying is the idealized version of him is almost that Luka Doncic version in Dallas where they were getting out in transition with him. He wasn't always on the ball as much when he was next to, because and I guess in theory you could do that next to Jalen Johnson.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's fair because we've just never seen him toggle the switch on and off or handle the duality of it. It does feel like this is the season to where if it doesn't happen, it's not, even if you believe Trae Young can still do it, I don't know that he's going to get the opportunity to do it in Atlanta beyond the season. That's what,
at some point the shelf life is what it is. And you go 7-8 years with a guy and you just don't ever really win big time. It's like the cycle continues.
20 plus minutes on the Atlanta Hawks. Other national NBA podcast has done that recently. We're going to do another team that national podcasts don't talk about, Grant. I have a question. How good are the Lakers really? Are they, this is a foremost threat in the Western Conference good, top 4 in the West good, top 3 in the West good, or are they confusingly good to where they belong in kind of the middle tier along with the Minnesota Timberwolves, where the Spurs are right now, the Phoenix Suns? Apparently, are they just not going to continue winning at their current clip, even though now they're as healthy as they've been because LeBron James is back, Luka Doncic is back, Austin Reeves is on the floor? I went into this with no strong opinion either way, in part because my priors were I didn't think the Lakers were going to be a heavyweight in the West. Not that they were going to be bad, because you have Luka, you have Reeves, you have LeBron. But if you would have told me that LeBron was going to miss the first, 14, 15 games of the season, and that they would be 11-4, I probably would have said no, especially with Luka missing some time sprinkled in there. So by the way, the LeBron return, just to touch on that really quickly, I had to remind myself earlier on throughout that game against the Jazz, okay, he hasn't played in a really long time, because it felt like a lot of bystander stuff, even on defense. And he finishes with 12 assists, 6 of which come in the fourth quarter. And that was just it felt like, okay, this is the vision born to fruition. LeBron is going to pick and choose his spots more than ever. We've seen it. But now you have Reeves, now you have Luka, and the effortlessness with which he there's just finding the diving Jackson Hayes, some chemistry with DeAndre Ayton, some of the obscene passes he could just throw, like that. I think it was Jake LaRavia caught one in the far corner, clearly wasn't expecting anyone to throw that. It was a reminder that LeBron can still just be really useful, where ever since Luka's come over in the trade, it's been kind of well, the Lakers are on Luka's timeline. This doesn't have to do with LeBron. He's definitely leaving after this season. I'm wondering if that casts a pall over this, rest of the year at all, his future there. But his ability to fit in, I'd like to see more stuff. Can he be used as the screener? Can he be, just because DeAndre Ayton's been fine. Jackson Hayes has been fine. I don't love either of them. I think they've been fine. Like, can we use LeBron? Like, maybe in the short roll a little bit. How many years have we been asking for that, though? But I'm watching them, and the biggest question I still have will be on the defensive end, because the offense, just its ceiling is, what did we used to say? It's thermonuclear AF. And they're only 8th in points scored per possession, but just like they're winning the minutes that Austin Reeves plays without Luka Doncic. You just can't defend this team on pick and rolls right now because of what Austin Reeves is able to do, what Luka Doncic is able to do. The Lakers, Grant, are averaging 1.12 points per possession in the pick and roll. This is their ball handlers. They're averaging 1.12 points per possession. That's first. The delta between them and second place, OKC, is the same as the delta between second place OKC and 20th place Chicago. OKC is averaging 0.98 points per possession. Their pick and roll ball handlers are. That is just absurd. I think we're also seeing the benefits of Marcus Smart as an example. By his standards, has been pretty efficient when they've had him run some stuff, to where in Memphis, and even at times in Boston, had to be almost the primary guy when they were shorthanded or you were looking at him to run the offense. When it's Reeves or when there's Luka there, it just makes life so much easier on him. Reeves and Luka and now LeBron are all going to make their big men look far better. This team hasn't even started hitting its threes at the clip you want. Luka's still sub 33% or whatever it is. They're also just, I look at some of their lineups and part of me is, well, shouldn't they be trying to squeeze in more of the defensive bodies here? And I look at Rui Hachimura as that guy to say, like, how necessary is he? And he's just been efficient as hell. He is shooting 60+% on long mid-range jumpers and 62% from mid-range overall, 31 to 50 this year, to go with the usual reliance, I should say usually reliable three-point shooting since he's arrived in LA. I know he gets table set a lot now, but he's shooting what he is from mid-range. You have that dependable threat from beyond the arc. What it's really allowing the Lakers to do, because I look at them, 8th in offense, that feels too low. 17th in defense, that feels too high. I look at this group and I think, why aren't they worse? There's value. What did you say before with the Hawks? You're not getting your offense set as often, it feels like, anymore. The Lakers are getting their offense set a lot.
Right.
And that invariably should help their defense. In some situations, it actually has not. They're bottom 5 in defense after they make a three. They're also 6th in points allowed per possession after they miss a shot. And so, they are making efforts to get back. Where I think when you look at this team and the chemistry that it feels like, I don't know what a Reeves, Doncic, LeBron, what does that trio look like? What's the interplay look like with them together? We've seen one game this season of it. I don't know what we want more of or what we're going to see down the line, but what they're able to do just with their base offense, gives them such a high floor that I'm now wondering, maybe I was just too low on the Lakers coming in here. And I still have questions about the defense, but if they can be 17th in defense, and they're not getting, you dig into the data, they're not getting super lucky on opponent three-point shooting. And it's just not, you start to think, okay, there might be a better team here than expected. For me, I still think they need some more two-way perimeter players. And DeAndre Ayton's been good. I think that he's helped them. You get to a point where you're top 10 in defensive rebounding. That's another thing that helps your defense. It gets underrated sometimes, but ending possessions, that's a big deal. But some of the other things I look at and just the way some of the plays are ending, Luka Doncic is contesting more shots at the rim than ever. I don't know how to feel about that. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I have zero idea. And I haven't mentioned him too much here, but he just looks great. He just, when he's healthy, he just looks like he's moving super well. Everyone's going to focus on the svelte physique. Sure, I'm sure that's helping. He's going to be more efficient from three-point range. You have what we did an extensive episode on Austin Reeves before. He is just one of the most efficient, high-volume ball handlers in the league right now. 1.26 points per possession out of the pick and roll. That's a pretty big deal when you consider basically half his minutes come without Luka, so he's not always benefiting from that gravity. Look at the decisions that he's been able to make out of double teams when he's getting near the basket. This team, I don't know that I underestimated them offensively, but I think I might have underestimated their overall ceiling. I now throw it to you. How good are the Lakers, really?
I think I'd start by saying a couple things have broken very right for them. The Luka health, fitness, activity being on just the absolute highest possible side of expectations, right? I think some of the reason we might have been skeptical was one, like, what's LeBron going to look like? How much can he play? And then, I don't know, for me at least, let's see Luka do it. Let's see him stay healthy before we say, okay, yeah, the conditioning and off court, whatever stuff, that's a thing of the past. Like he's definitely delivered on that front. So like one of the biggest reasons for skepticism is not one now, at least so far. And Austin Reeves leveling up, I don't know if that's more or less surprising than Luka just being this version of himself. I didn't see Austin Reeves having like another leap like this in him. Maybe he just needed the opportunity. I don't know. So those have been positive breaks. LeBron missing time has been a negative. I still think so like if you had said going in, Reeves is going to play like this and Luka is going to play like this, you would have probably said, well, this offense is going to be top 5 offense. Just because how could it not be? If Luka and just some dudes, when Luka is his best self, is a top 5 offense. I think that the answer to how good are the Lakers really still has to hinge on the defense and how much you believe in it. Because the other thing we talked about a lot coming into the season was with the Lakers' best lineups on the floor, there will be 3 guys that opposing teams go at. And this is probably more of a playoff question. You're going to go at Reeves. You're going to go at Doncic, if only because you need to try to wear him out. You might go at LeBron because you'd like to see if at his age, can he hold up over and over. Now, you can only go at one guy per possession, so maybe they could spread the load, and we didn't account for that when thinking about the defensive vulnerability here. But I still am skeptical that and again, this is probably more of a playoff question, that this is a team that can win I guess let's say 3 playoff rounds because the defense just doesn't seem like it has the personnel in the biggest moments to really be a strength. And like you said, it's 17th right now. So like, and they're also the strength. It's been fine, right?
It's the fact that 17th, I said that feels too good. Speaks to my view of their personnel. Look, you're not going to win, to your point. You're not winning. I don't think you're winning. Never mind 3. You're not winning 2 playoff series in the West if you rank in the bottom 10 of efficiency allowed from both 3 and at the rim. I don't care what types of shots you're allowing. You're just not going to. You're not going to win 2 playoff series with that happening.
So I think it's fair to say the Lakers are better than either of us thought. But how much better? Because what was their over-under? Like, we both went under, I think, but it was because it was like 49 or 48 or something in that range, if memory serves, which usually it doesn't. I don't think that they are on the level of some teams we're going to talk about later. Like, OKC is its own thing, but like Houston, Denver, skeptical, right? And like Houston is not a perfect team either, as we're going to talk about. So I would say the Lakers are certainly better than I thought, but I still have real questions about the defense.
Well, here's the sort of, and like to their point, they do have just some like really good wins though this year. Yeah. You beat the Wolves when you didn't have Luka or LeBron. You beat, I think, the Wolves when you did have Luka and Austin Reeves, and that was the one time the Wolves had Anthony Edwards, I believe. They did lose to Golden State to open the season. But my question, I guess, to you is, and I think you do need to see more of, okay, well, what does this look like with LeBron James? And I think the offense is just going to get better. He's probably even going to help them get out and transition more, just like with the hit-head pass. And is that one of the things we don't appreciate about him enough, or is it adequately appreciated? Whereas when he wants to, that dude still like gets up and down the floor on offense with the ball in his hands. But are they good enough to view this season as, well, we should, because we kind of looked at it as they're going to play out this season. They could have cap space next summer. They'll have multiple draft picks they could trade next summer. And that's when they will kind of reevaluate what's going to happen with LeBron. He's coming off the books as well. Reeves is free agency. Or are they good enough, do you think, are they better enough than we expected to kind of view making midseason upgrades as a necessity? Because I think you could, another backup big would be nice. We've mentioned two-way wing, like a combo wing or somebody like Najee Marshall. We were texting. He would be fun for this team.
I think part of the reason we weren't all in on the Lakers is because of the way they behaved this past offseason and how it suggested that like this wasn't a year that they're really going for it. And now the way that they've played, and the reason we're talking about them is because it kind of seems like they might be a move away from really going for it. So in some senses, it does seem like they might be surprised by how they've played so far. I think it would be a little bit, man, you can't call it short-sighted to go for it this year, right? If you think you're close and they sustain like roughly this level of play on offense. Because you have LeBron. He's 100. Like you might lose Austin Reeves. Like,
yeah, but I think if you're viewing it as Austin Reeves and Luka are the future, doesn't it become short-sighted at that point? And then how do you reconcile the Oklahoma City of it all? I know teams don't approach it as, well, we're going to hold off until Oklahoma City starts to peter out, because that's probably never going to happen at this point. But you do have to weigh, if it costs a first-round pick to make a move, I think you have to view it through the lens of, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, is does this help us beat OKC and Denver, which are two, you probably have to go through both to come out of the West.
I just think like maybe this is like, do you just take the Daryl Morey of it, like approach? And it's like, if we have a 5% title equity, we're in. We got to go for it.
Well, do you?
And like
do they have? That's the
I
question.
have no idea like how, like what, probably the odds would say they do have a 5% chance. I don't know what, maybe he's got proprietary metrics that decide what 5% of title equity actually is. I mean, I guess what I would say, where I would land is, I thought prior to the season that it made sense for them to sort of do some keep the powder dry kind of behavior. Now, with Reeves playing like this, with Luka looking like this, with LeBron like making so much sense as like a kind of lower usage, pick your spots, third option who just like can only help you, I'm a lot more open to the idea of let's move some stuff. Because like, yeah, there's always going to be like, I don't know, can we beat OKC? Like fear of acknowledgement of how dominant OKC looks cannot be the reason you don't go make a go for it trade. Because like, what if Shea gets hurt? What if J-Dub's wrist is never right? Like you can't, I don't think you can let that be the reason you don't go make a move. If you don't make a win now move as the Lakers now, it's because you've got bigger plans for the next 7 years or whatever. And it's just like, and you have no chance at a title.
Based on the timing of them announcing, I know ownership is changing, but like you get rid of Joey and Jesse Buss, and then you got rid of most of the scouting department too, apparently. I kind of wonder if that's the route they're taking. Maybe that doesn't impact their approach to the trade deadline. So to wrap it up here, the Lakers' level of good, I want to frame it in, well, what player away are they? Is it, so let's say, here's a really, I don't know if they could get him. I think they probably could. Herb Jones. Was that the name you were thinking?
Honestly, I went Trey Murphy first, and I was like, no, he's not enough of a defender at all. Like Andrew Wiggins. What if they had Andrew Wiggins? Like just to pick the like, yeah, can definitely guard and help you on both ends. Not a star. Herb Jones would like it if I trusted his shot a little bit more.
This team is, I mean, when you look at Marcus Smart or even Jake LaRavia, sub 35%, Gabe Benson, of course.
Well, are they a healthy Dorian Finney-Smith away? Does that do anything for you?
That would be when is Dorian Finney-Smith going to be healthy? I think
I don't know. There was a time when Dorian Finney-Smith, like however many 3-4 years ago, would have been like, yep, that's the guy. That's who you're talking about.
Right. Wiggins would be interesting. Herb would be interesting. Najee Marshall's not a good enough shooter, but I think he would help them a bunch. Although this team is what he's doing downhill. I mean, they're shooting 59% on drives.
Okay, PJ Washington. I mean, he's not available, but like a player like that, and then I think we're talking.
Yeah, he also can't be traded. Herb Jones could be traded.
No,
right?
We're just talking level of player. Like that. He's a good starter. He's a two-way player, can guard lots of positions, can do enough offensively to not be like you have to account for him.
I think where I would land on it is that if you could, and Herb Jones could be traded in mid-January, I wasn't sure. If you could get a Herb Jones, because these are guys that are going to cost you a first-round pick, I'm probably doing it. And I maybe that's damning with faint praise, but if you can get a Wiggins, because I don't think, who would you rather have as this team, Herb Jones or Andrew Wiggins?
I mean, Wiggins makes a lot, but I think he's expiring, or maybe has a player option.
Honestly, if you could give the Vando contract to Miami with a first-round pick and then stepladder your way there with other salaries, I might prefer the Wiggins route.
Yeah. I mean, NBA champion Andrew Wiggins. Let's not forget that.
You're up next. What are we talking about now?
Let's talk about Andrew Wiggins. This is going to be a Wiggins-centric podcast. Let's talk about his current team, the Miami Heat. The question is kind of a set of questions here, but the main one is, like, what is the way that they're playing right now, that the way that they've started the season, what's that mean for Bam, for Tyler Herro, and really just kind of like the team and how it looks going forward? The way that they have played is interesting and has been the topic of a great deal of discussion. Just to put like a quick synopsis together, they're 9-6, 13th on offense, 7th on defense. They're on pace for like 52 wins. They're 5-2 over the last couple weeks. They're doing this by playing a very unusual style that is extremely fast, does not involve a lot of ball screens. Some numbers there. They're 4th in transition frequency, 1st in pace, 106.3 possessions per 48. They're number 2 in total time to shot, just around 10 seconds, which is like 2 full seconds faster than last year. So they're sprinting the ball up. They're number 2 in fast break points. They're 2nd in drives. They're tied for the fewest average seconds per touch, so the ball hops. They have the highest average speed, just how fast are guys moving. And the crazy thing is, if you sort that by offense, their speed on average of 5.23 miles per hour on offense is way, way ahead of second place, which is at 4.96. And the difference between that is kind of like, I can't remember the exact numbers, but when you've said, the difference between first and second is like the difference between second and 20th, that's the level of distinction we're talking about here. I would note, though, that the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets are the slowest and third slowest teams in the league by that metric. Those are the top 2 offenses in the NBA. Going fast does not necessarily mean you have a good offense. So what I would posit before we get to the Bam and Herro of it is that the way the Heat are playing right now, to me, is a great way to rack up regular season wins and set a high floor for yourself. I don't know that it is like an optimal system with any personnel, because part of the reason they're playing this way is like Herro being out means you don't have someone that you want to spam pick and rolls with or slow the offense down and try to hunt like conventional shots with. The fact that there are other teams playing very, very successfully, playing much better offense than the Heat in quote unquote more conventional ways suggests to me that this isn't like a hack. Like the Heat have not solved NBA offense. I think this works with what they have. I don't know that it's necessarily the best way to play offense for every team. I think teams will take elements of this just because it's exciting and might, again, set a high floor. But so what's that mean for Herro and Bam? To me, the Bam fit is just like a no-brainer because he's shooting more threes than he ever has.
Almost 6 a game. And then
right. He's not someone... Mike Shearer had a phenomenal basketball's poetry, just a great write-up, and it's a couple weeks old now, but all of it still applies. Like, what are the Heat doing? What's different? A lot of the stats I looked up stemmed from what he was showing in film and stuff like that. The Bam fit, to me, is just kind of like, yeah, he's a smart passer, he's athletic, he moves well, you should play fast with that guy, and now that he shoots threes, everything kind of works. Like, you get Bam in isolation against the center, which is all just the Heat's offense doesn't necessarily get categorized as ISO heavy, but that is kind of what it is, because the goal is you drive your guy to the basket and either try to beat him one-on-one or start the spin cycle. He's fine there. Herro is more interesting just because he's someone that has a higher touch time. He dribbles the ball more. He's a very good pick and roll player. He can shoot on, coming off screens really effectively. He's a good offensive player in what you might term a more conventional approach. That said, though, if you just look at last year's numbers, Davion Mitchell and Terry Rozier had longer average touch time, dribbled more. So, Herro's not coming in as, we're not talking about someone on a Jalen Brunson level of, you're going to have to reduce your time on the ball and your touches and your primacy in the offense. Herro wasn't and isn't that type of guy. So I'm pretty confident that he can fit into what the Heat are doing. I think my question to you is, once you've got Herro and Bam back in the fold, would you imagine the Heat utilizing more of like, okay, yeah, we have the style, we have our principles, we want to get it over half court, we want to drive, we maybe don't set ball screens, but do you think that you tailor stuff to Herro and to Bam, or do you say, guys, this is what we're doing, fit in, like just play the style? Like, which way would you, because I would note too before you answer, like the offense is way better than it's been. They've been 21st or worse in scoring efficiency each of the last 3 years. It's 13th now. They're still a defense-first team. They're 7th on defense. Like, the Heat are better. They're not a great offense. So, like, which way does that cut as you're trying to decide how to use Herro, Bam, and like, think about what style you want to play with those guys?
I really do not worry about Tyler Herro fitting into the offense, as you already said. And we've kind of seen, even last year, there's going to be value in their 7th and half-court offense right now. I think there's just going to be value in having your best passer on the floor when you are going to be in situations where maybe the half court, like you're going to have to, those possessions are going to last longer. I also think that we have seen in the past that Herro doesn't have to slow down your attack. In part, you mentioned the stuff they can run for him away from the ball, but just in terms of, if this team needs to get out in transition, like Herro doesn't necessarily, he's not Jimmy Butler. He's not, I think, going to inherently look to slow it down. And so I think that benefits them. And even last year, like, they were in transition basically like the same amount of time when he was on or off the court. And so I would think that he can fit into, regardless of whether he's being used on the ball or off the ball. You mentioned it at the end was going to end up being, I think, the bigger issue for this team. And I might just trust them to figure it out because it's Eric Spoelstra and it's the Heat. What do they look like defensively when presumably Norman Powell and Tyler Herro are both playing minutes together? Because I do think the theory, and maybe it's not anymore because of how good the offense has been, how good Norman Powell has been when he's been healthy without Herro. I thought the theory was, well, they really want both of these guys to be on the court. They have to be at some point. They're 2 of your 3 best offensive players. So you can stagger them. And I think that would actually help you. One, maybe it preserves a lot of what you're doing, but it also kind of allows you to say, well, Herro comes in and during his staggered minutes is maybe that's when we change our fastball. And we saw it with, I don't know if would Memphis's offense have worked out in the playoffs last year? Had they stuck to it? We don't know. So there would need to be proof of concept. I think I find myself sort of wondering, I think they could get better offensively when Tyler Herro is healthy, but will it come at a defensive trade-off when you're looking at some of their core lineups? Because now you're going to start getting into, okay, well, if it's Norman Powell and Tyler Herro, how do you want to game the front court? Do you want Nikola Jovic on the floor for any of those minutes and you're providing the extra stretch? Is it we need to go dual big with Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo for a lot of those minutes? Are we downsizing a little bit more? There's a Davion Mitchell and an Andrew Wiggins on the court. I think it's more of a good problem to have than an actual problem, but it is something because Norman Powell is headed for free agency. Tyler Herro has 1 year left on his deal, was extension eligible this past fall. You get into wondering, in theory, if you look at Miami on paper, their biggest need is still the same.
Yeah.
It's the lead playmaker for the entire team. Maybe the bigger question is, does Tyler Herro provide enough net offensive value as a scorer and a playmaker now to you for you to view the Heat as a team that maybe they're not going to double and triple down around this core, but it's, okay, we're not looking at we need to move. Like, what is more likely, that Miami is good enough, I guess, to make additions this year and moving forward, or that they're going to need to have maybe not a hard reset, but one of Herro or Bam, it's going to need to be changed up from them. And more likely, it would be Herro because moving Bam would be the hard reset.
Right. I think my gut is that, just let's get real stupid about it, they still need a guy who's better than their best guy if they're going to try to win a championship. I think Bam, we love Bam. Like, that's a given. He's not the best player on a team that wins a title or goes to the finals. I don't think, like, you need your prime Jimmy Butlers or whoever to sort of put him in the right spot. And Herro certainly is not, to me, the type of player that you can build an offense around. So yeah, I guess then if this holds up and the Heat have even more success with those two guys, you'd probably look to add as opposed to a reset. The one thing I just like kind of thought exercise, like with respect to integrating Bam and Herro. Bam's back, Herro's not. If you're trying to decide what style you want to play as the Heat, or like how much you want to keep doing these types of things that you've been doing versus more conventional stuff, I think, don't you think that maybe one of the issues you have to consider is like, well, this style has gotten a version of Jaime Jaquez Jr. that did not exist before. And if he's not the most improved player, he's on the short list of candidates right now. I think you could make similar cases for like Simone Fontecchio is finally like the guy that everybody hoped he would be in this system. He's benefiting from the drive kick, like, oh man, the defense just like got itself tied in knots, open shot. Maybe Jovic is that way. Maybe Davion Mitchell is that way. Like those guys.
Pele Larson
seem to all, even Ware is like, well, nobody boxed him out because we're all scrambling everywhere. And he has a 17 rebound game. So those guys, I think, are more dependent for their success on the way the Heat are playing right now. And I think maybe you have to factor that in when you're deciding like, all right, well, but Herro and Bam maybe play better in this conventional way. Like, yeah, they might be a little better there. I think the wiser move is to trust your absolute most talented players to fit into this system. Because if you tweak this and go back to more conventional stuff, I think you might lose a lot from these other role guys that have excelled with how you're playing now. So you just have to trust the talent, top-end talent, to figure it out, because you don't want to mess up what's worked so well for a lot of the other guys that maybe aren't this good in any other style of play.
But at the same time, how much, like where is it going to get you if you're viewing, let's just use Herros. We've seen, like, we have proof of concept with Bam for this season. If you're worried about, well, what is Herro going to do to Jaime Jaquez Jr., who needs to have the ball in his hands, like, to really be impactful on the offensive end. And
yes.
Now, I think Herro's good enough to where you can still allow that. But if you need your best player, one of your two best players, unless you actually think that Jaime Jaquez Jr. is more valuable than Tyler Herro, and then maybe that would be a different discussion. But like Simone Fontecchio certainly isn't. You don't want to end up shifting the ground beneath your star players too much just to account for Jaime Jaquez Jr. That's not where I'm at.
No, and
go ahead.
No, I agree. I would say, like, I would use Powell as a comp. Like, he's looking great. He's fine in playing this way. And you would certainly argue that, like, at least last year, Powell and Herro were pretty close to equals, right? Like, in terms of, like, overall production and, like, who's the better player. I think Herro, just given his youth and ball handling and stuff, might be better. But, like, it's more of, like, I trust the top-end talents like Herro to figure out how to play just as well in this style as any other, more than I trust these 4 or 5 other guys to be able to be this good if we change how we play. You know, I get what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you can't ask the best guy to play a certain way because you're worried about your 5th best guy. But I think, like, it's more just you can trust the higher end talents to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think they will. I mean, even like Herro's the one that we glom onto because I think he played more of that. Like Norman Powell, even last year during the starless minutes, it wasn't just him dominating everything. Herro at points needed to for Miami. I think the way that he changed the shot diet for a lot of last year, he was in the 67th percentile of catch and shoot 3-pointers per 75 possessions. And that's on a team that didn't really have anyone to get him the ball for a majority of the season. So now you look at the way the Heat are playing, I'm pretty optimistic. I don't know what their ceiling is, though, with the exact core as it currently stands, but the way the East is shaking out, I don't think the Knicks or the Cavs have really impressed anybody. And so it feels like there's decidedly at least 3 spots, depending on how you feel about the Pistons and the Raptors. It feels like there's 3 spots in the top 4 in the East that might just be up for grabs. People probably had it penciled in as 2, but with the Magic playing the way they are, the Heat could be one of them. And I honestly think that Herro's going to make them only better, maybe more variable, and maybe there'll be a learning curve there. But I guess this is an optimism pod, except for the Hawks, is that we're higher on the Lakers and we're higher on the Heat than when we started.
Yeah.
I'm going to take us to, speaking of top 4 in the East, do you know who's number 2 in the East, Grant?
Is it you? Are they yours or are they mine? Though they can be yours. I believe it is your Toronto Raptors.
It is. And the Toronto Raptors are killing it. I'm happy that I smashed their over when we were going through that exercise, they are among the teams who rank in the top 10 of offense and defense. Their offense, they're not taking a ton of threes. They're shooting them efficiently. They are first in transition frequency. Only the Wizards, Grant, play faster after a missed shot by the opponent. So just looking at the average offensive possession time, only the Wizards are faster after the opponent misses a shot. Now you're kind of looking, the big question with the Raptors is, well, how are they going to operate when they're in the half court, when things have to slow down a little bit, even if they're trying to go through their actions faster? Grant, they're going to be pretty good. They're third in half court offense efficiency this year. One of the most interesting things I think is, okay, what does Brandon Ingram's role look like on this team? It works. It's a more streamlined version of what he needs to do. It's focus on scoring for the most part. He doesn't have to do much playmaking, but he's also not, it's not scoring where, okay, you go through your typical machinations and dominate the ball for X amount of seconds. His last healthy season, so not in 2023, 2024, excuse me, he averaged 4.01 seconds per touch and 3.17 dribbles per touch. 41.5% of his twos came off assists. This year, 3.17 seconds per touch, 2.2 dribbles per touch, and about 47% of his twos are coming off assists. That's a career high. And I know that still doesn't seem like a high number, but I was watching, it struck me the most, I think, in their game against the Rockets. I wanted to know, has he ever just came off of more screens away from the ball and then gone right into a shot? The answer is no. This is the highest off-ball screen usage that he has ever gotten. That's a big deal. It's his lowest true usage season since 2018-2019. And true usage just takes into account some additional playmaking metrics in addition to possessions that ends in turnovers and shots. They have really trimmed down his role. There's some awkwardness there. He's shooting under 30% on catch and shoot threes, which over the past few games has basically been removed from his diet. I think you could look at that and say, well, he'll get better there. I think the fit has been far more, if not seamless, more intuitive than you would have expected. Killing it from mid-range, as are the Raptors in general. The other three players that I think you need to shout out a ton of players, but more of the quick hitters. Emmanuel Quickley, another guy who just seems like he's operating within the ecosystem better, not really forcing things. They're not asking him to run a ton of the offense, run basic stuff, but he's also not turning it over at all. And so it's okay, these are lower usage primary ball handlers when you look at him or RJ Barrett, but if they're not going to turn the ball over a ton, that's great. RJ Barrett, he's another guy who his off-ball usage is through the roof, even relative to what he was doing in Toronto before this. This is the lowest dribbles per touch of his career. He has the highest drive pass-out rate of his career, and 56.3% of his twos are coming off assists. That's the second highest of his career. And this has been one of the most efficient versions of himself. He's only averaged more points per shot attempt once. The final main player, Jakob Poeltl here too, the space he creates with his screens, the decision-making he can make on rolls have been great. I would like to start the Scotty Barnes belongs on the back end of the MVP ballot conversation right now. He finished 10th in my latest MVP ladder. I think he was one of the names we mentioned when we were trying to, with a twist it, who's someone that can come out of nowhere and enter the MVP running. He has been excellent. I want him to take fewer mid-range jumpers. I don't love it. The efficiency's not there. I'd like to see less of it. He's shooting really well on above the break threes right now, 44% on arc threes. Really big deal. I think he is he just seems to have the assist numbers won't always show it, although he's of course up there over 5 assists per game. He just has the most connectivity with everyone else on the team compared to anyone else on the team. Smart passing. He's finding players that are cutting in from the wings. Really great chemistry with Jakob Poeltl when he's in the short roll. Defensively, he is just Scotty Barnes at this point is a behemoth. The rim protection numbers are not great, but he's also contesting a career high of opponent shots at the basket. Good luck just making a pass with him on the court, on the ball, try to make an entry pass. Good luck with him there. The defensive playmaking is kind of insane. He is on pace, Grant, of anyone who has averaged over 30 minutes per game in a single season to become the first player to get 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks per 100 possessions. Excuse me, I messed it up. The last player to get 2 steals per 100 possessions and 2.5 blocks per 100 possessions while averaging at least 30 minutes per game was Anthony Davis in 2019-2020, just to put the defensive playmaking in context. And there are 2 plays when you're looking at that have stuck out to me, one of them recently, and they were both against the Cavs, ironically, where Scottie Barnes' defensive value bleeds through for me. The most recent one was against the Cavs, and I think it was actually brought up by, I want to say it was the dunker spot, but Scottie Barnes flies in from the middle to cut off Donovan Mitchell on the left wing.
I know what you're talking about.
Teleports over to Evan Mobley on the left side when Mitchell passes to him to block the three-pointer, and then ends up getting the basket in transition. That's great. That's probably a play that stood out to a bunch of people. Earlier in the year, though, against the Cavs, he had this play where it was kind of broken, kind of by design, but he overcloses out on Dean Wade, avoids fouling, but ends up behind Dean Wade. So he shifts over. Dean Wade puts the ball on the floor, is driving. Scottie Barnes shifts over to Evan Mobley, who is lifting out of the corner at that point. Dean Wade then kicks it out to Evan Mobley, and Scottie Barnes' body is just not in a position to defend anything at this point. Evan Mobley catches it on the go, gets all the way downhill. Scottie Barnes is there. By the time Evan Mobley's deep into his drive, Scottie Barnes, I don't even think, has caught the free throw line yet. By the time he ends his drive, Scottie Barnes is right there with 2 or 3 Raptors. Evan Mobley makes the dump-off pass to Dean Wade right around the basket. Scottie Barnes rotates and just blocks the shot. The possession that looks like it was going to be a blown defensive possession for the Raptors is blown up by Scottie Barnes. He is going to make, if he stays healthy, an all-defense team this year. Shout out to Samson Folk, came on the podcast for the look ahead, asked me if I thought he would make it. I said, it's not outside the realm of possibility. I don't know if I'd predict it. Should have predicted it. He's been fantastic. This team is fantastic. And the final note I have on them is they're also just deep. They have the best bench point differential per 100 possessions in the league right now. Mamu's been a breath of fresh air. Shout out to Samson Folk again. The Mamu drives have been great. There's not a ton of them, but he's shooting over 60% on them. But the way he can play, it's not just the spacing for him. He opens up the floor. Grady Dick, I still don't know what to make of Grady Dick, but the Raptors' rim frequency shoots through the roof with him on the court because defenses defend him like he's this 5-alarm fire, even though the efficiency says that he's not a 5-alarm fire. So this team, if we're talking about Miami, Atlanta, which of these teams that are kind of, they're viewed as dark horses or they're playing like dark horses with a bigger threat, non-Pistons division because they're lording over everyone right now, I am most immediately high on the Toronto Raptors as just after get through the Pistons, the Cavs, the Knicks. I think they're the team I look at right now in the East and say, yeah, they're going to be the 4th or the 3rd best team in the East.
Looking back at what we came into the season, kind of, I don't know if you had to do the thumbnail sketch of like the Raptors look ahead or maybe not the look ahead, our thoughts. What do you think the collective basketball consuming public, we got most wrong? And I'll give you 3 choices, kind of increasing from micro to macro. The Pirtle extension, Ingram's fit, or the broader, like, what the fuck is this roster? The construction, right? Because that was just, like, everybody conceded, like, yeah, there's a lot of talent on this team. None of it makes sense together. Like, which of those 3 things, based on what you've seen so far this season and just how they've played, how they've performed, which of those 3 things seems like the most wrong analysis?
It's probably the Brandon Ingram fit, although I think you could just say the broader strokes because I think I don't know what to fold the Brandon Ingram fit into because everyone was worried. It was the one ball argument as to, well, how does this impact Scottie? How does this impact RJ Barrett?
I mean, just to credit the doubters a little bit, it's like it was the one ball thing, but it was also like, is he going to shoot enough threes? It was, can he be part of a team that wants to move the ball the way that Darko Rajakovic wants his teams to move the ball? Like, it was, I mean, I know you're simplifying, but like I actually agree with you. I don't know how to separate the Ingram question from the overall roster construction, but like those were real concerns. And like all the numbers you laid out, Ingram has been like just different than.
But what you hit on is, I think you could look at it and say 4 threes a game, 30% from no, that's not enough. And so what does this impact it at all over time is a question you could have. But I still think it's when you look at the general principles with which the Raptors play. people were overly concerned, probably including myself there, but I was more of a Raptors optimist, like in general.
Yeah.
But even this, out of the gate, top 10 in offense, not something I would have expected. I will say the other thing, though, that we might have just underrated, which, and I mean this collectively, which is kind of funny because now we know how important depth is. This team does just have a lot of guys. And so even if all the fits aren't intuitive, it's like Jamison Battle can come in and log minutes. Like Ochai Agbaji's kind of buried on this team right now. Colin Murray-Boyles, what did we sit here and say? How many times it was, we love CMB. We don't like the idea of CMB on the Raptors. Because why? We hate the idea of someone who plays his ass off on defense?
Right.
No, I didn't think he has some inflated three-point shooting games, and he's been better out of the short roll than I expected. I think the things we underestimated the most was them to continue playing how they wanted to on offense at full strength, and then just what the depth would wind up doing for this team, because I think that depth contributes to why they're able to play the way that they do on offense.
I don't know if I'm ready to say that, like, broadly speaking, the NBA has just leveled up in terms of maybe it's coaching staff, maybe it's analytics staff, in just figuring out, like, yeah, we over-index on this and we're weak here, but here's how we should play to get the most out of this talent that we have. Like, we just talked about the Heat, and now we're talking about the Raptors. And those are two teams, I think, that are not like what you'd call balanced or capable of playing like conventional basketball and excelling, but it's like they have a lot of like a couple things, and they're just leaning into strengths. You know, like the Raptors have like length and athleticism and good passers and depth. And it's like, okay, we'll play this way and get the most out of it. It doesn't matter that Murray-Boyles and like Ingram and Barnes and Pirtle, like those are all weird fits. Like, yeah, those are issues. But do you see what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, it does feel like we're seeing more and more of like, we're going to play this kind of, the Raptors aren't extreme in like the same way the Heat are or the Rockets are, but like, I don't know. It's starting to feel like teams are more willing to just, we're going to do some weirder stuff and like play sort of an unbalanced way because that's who we have and that's how we'll be best. And like maybe there's just, the league just gets smarter every year.
Yeah, that's a good point. We also might just be, do we need to start looking at teams where it's, if you can actually map out an 8 or 9 man rotation of real NBA players, not like the
how talented
Lakers
are you
where you have to stretch it. Yeah, it's if you can just, like the Heat would be another good example of this, and they don't necessarily have a top 10 guy. So yeah, we know the Lakers will be good because they have Luka, or that the Bucks will kill opponents when Giannis is on the floor. It happens when he's off. If you just have the blueprint of, no, we can name you 8, 9 guys right now that would belong in an NBA rotation, not just yours, we might just be underestimating the value of that.
Right. Well, Pacers last year, same thing. It's like, well, yeah, we could go deep as you want. Like, we'll play fast, and everyone we put on the floor is good. Deal with that. Like, because you probably can't do that most nights, you know, as an opponent. I would put a button on this and say we're talking regular season for all of these teams so far.
No, they're winning the title.
It's going to be, I think my theory that like, well, we can be unbalanced and successful, that's going to run into like some higher hurdles, I think, in the playoffs. But we are where we are in the season, so that's all we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm buying what I'm seeing from the Raptors, definitely regular season wise. But they'll be. I want to see them and maybe the Heat. Like, I don't want to see those teams make changes before the playoffs because I want to see what this looks for those two teams, especially what it looks like in the playoffs.
Yeah.
All right,
you're up.
We got to get into
next?
some lightning round topics here pretty soon. I think we're running short.
Yeah, you're up. So pick one. Let's go.
Let's talk about some kind of blow it up potential teams, like the disaster teams, I guess you'd call them. Yeah, they're all pretty big disasters. So let's just say the following: Dallas, Sacramento, Indiana, Memphis, and the Clippers is most likely or best positioned or would be best served by blowing it up. And I'm gonna rank them starting at the end of this, just so we can kind of dispense with them. And you tell me if you agree or disagree. So to me, there's 5 teams here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have a 4A and a 4B at the end of the list, which is like, it's more about, can they blow it up and how easy is that going to be? And that is 4A is the Kings and 4B is the Clippers. Not saying neither of those teams should blow it up. It's just like, what's that look like? I think they both, and the Kings absolutely need to. But if you're the Clippers, all right, are you interested, potential trade suitor, in James Harden or Kawhi Leonard at high costs? No. Okay, are you interested in like the 14, oh shit, they got old fast reserves and role players we have? I mean, maybe, but like, what's the return on that? Are we getting seconds and like equally useless money? Really hard for the Clippers. The Kings, it's like DeRozan, Levine, Sabonis.
Who's now injured too.
Who's hurt? He's going to miss a month with the torn meniscus, like minimum. Who's looking at those contracts and seeing positive value? I mean, Keegan Murray hasn't played, or I think maybe he just came back. Either way, it's like, yeah, teams might be interested in him. Just got his new money. So
time for Domas to not play.
Right. So it's really hard for those teams. So then we'll jump back to the top of the list. Best position to, or makes the most sense to quote unquote blow it up. To me, Dallas is number one. And we've already got the rumblings of the AD stuff and Mark Cuban posturing like, no, we're not trading him, which is like, of course, what you do.
Did you read the Tim McMahon piece where there was a quote, the source that said when they were asking about Mark Cuban feeling more involved, like he's floating in his Skechers right now. That's one of the funniest quotes I've seen.
That was from the Skechers brand rep, probably. So I think it's just Dallas because you have Anthony Davis to trade. You have why wouldn't you start over? Or not totally start over, but like you have Cooper Flag, so there's your foundational piece. I still like basically all their role players. You know, I love PJ Washington. Like every time I mention him, you have to remind me he can't be traded. I wouldn't trade PJ Washington. I'll say that.
But you wouldn't legally trade PJ Washington
if you move Anthony Davis and don't just erase him from the salary sheet. The only guy making more than $18 million on Dallas's payroll next year is Kyrie Irving. So like they've got all these theoretically tradable numbers if they want to do something. So like they just, and the turn the page aspect of it with Nico Harrison being gone, like now you can analyze this roster with clear eyes and not feeling pot committed. So Dallas makes the most sense and seems to be best positioned and probably should be incentivized to kind of blow it up is maybe too strong, but like we're going to refresh a little bit here. After that, to me, it's the Grizzlies just because, you know, the John Morant era feels like it's coming to a close. We already did the Desmond Bane trade, so you obviously are open to the concept of kind of moving off some core guys. The Pacers I stuck in the middle because I don't want them to blow it up. It's like, I don't know what that would even look like for them. So maybe you can agree, disagree with the rankings, talk about whoever you want.
The Pacers feel least likely and also like they shouldn't. It was just that they were the team, like this group of teams was who were disastrous relative to expectations. And even without Tyrese Halliburton, and I know they've dealt with injuries aside from Halliburton, we didn't look at them and say, oh, they're going to have as many wins 15 games into the season as the Brooklyn Nets.
And two, I would point out that like both for the Pacers and the Kings, for different reasons, it's like, this is fine. Because the Pacers got their pick back and Tyrese Halliburton's out. So it's like, all right, the gap year was always like a maybe kind of in there thing. And now it just is because everybody got hurt. And for the Kings, it's like, well, you don't have a choice because you're this bad and the vibes are this messed up. And now your best player's hurt. So like they're not, it's like you talk about like executives taking a club out of the coach's bag. Sometimes it's like, well, now the Kings just like, they cannot win. So there's no reason they can't go chase the next Levine or DeRozan, and they just have to be bad. So it's kind of like it's not the worst thing that they're disasters. But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's totally fine. I would agree most of what you said. The Mavericks are probably the right answer. I agree with everything you said about the Clippers. I do kind of feel like I want to see the Grizzlies just blow it up and get it over with, though, because it's. You're probably trading John Morant at the nadir of his value. I just don't know if it's ever going to be much higher than it is now. And there's just like, you already traded Desmond Bane. You've telegraphed that like you're not married to this era. So it sort of feels like you're unnecessarily hovering in the in-between. Maybe they look at it as, well, right now we have John Morant and we're still pretty bad. We're, we're 11th in the Western, we're 11th in the Western Conference.
You sort of have John Morant.
We sort of have, but he's there. So I think, and also I'm wondering if their baseline of assets outside of, okay, yes, you have Anthony Davis in Dallas, you have John Morant in Memphis. When you trickle down, who has the more valuable role players that you could kind of get things for? And I actually think it might be the Grizzlies just because PJ Washington can't be traded in Dallas. I know teams want Daniel Gafford, but what are you even getting for Derek Lively at this point? Whereas if you're Memphis, you also have, by the way, in theory, you have two dudes. I don't know where they would land on this, but if you wanted to trade Jaren Jackson Jr., imagine what you could get for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume they don't want to. They renegotiated and extended, but Santi Aldama, what is it? What can you get for someone like him? And the Grizzlies are just so jumbled. I have no idea because let's say this. We know what the Mavs will do if they blow it up. What are the Grizzlies doing if they blow it up? If they don't blow it up, I have zero idea. And
so right, the reason they're tricky is because like how it's not easy to trade Ja Morant, or it's not easy to trade him and get anything back that you'd like. Yeah, of course we'll do that. It's just the market is brutal. But I think you're right that like the longer this goes on, maybe it doesn't get any better.
Let's move on to Grant. Who's the third best team in the NBA? We're going to operate under the assumption that OKC is 1. I know, bold. And I'm going to say Denver is 2. I haven't seen anyone that makes me think Denver is belonging in a tier with anyone other than OKC. It feels like maybe those two teams each belong in their own tiers even.
Can I steer us to two teams to really focus on? So
the Raptors, the Pistons. Go ahead.
What would you say if I think it's Houston or Detroit need to be the top things we talk about?
That wouldn't shock me too much because the Knicks just don't. I watch a lot of Knicks. Everybody knows that. They don't have that level. It's just they don't have it. I like what the offense looks like under Mike Brown, but they need to trade at minimum for at least one other good combo wing because they can't defend with OG Anunoby off the floor.
The defense is the issue, right? With them, that's where I was like, oh, I don't know. That bumped. I bumped on that.
And the defense and the sample size is getting a little big when you look at last season. Mitchell Robinson can't anchor the defense by himself, and I don't know that you need OG Anunoby to anchor a defense when you have liabilities in Cat and Brunson rather than just one of them, to where it's probably unrealistic to ask Mitchell Robinson to shoulder even covering up for Cat at this point when you look at his past ankle injuries. It's not the Knicks. It could. I would nominate to put the Cavs in there because they need to be healthy, and I kind of don't trust them, but the talent on paper, and I don't know that they deal with physicality all that well just yet. Donovan Mitchell's just incredible. Yeah. Evan Mobley might be the best two-way player in the, he's certainly in the conference. There's him. There's, non-Wemby division, but just two-way straight player. I know that's a dumb honor. Let's see what they look like at full strength. But the way I was going to say it is, do the Pistons belong in, because I was trying to look at this as teams who don't need to make a move to be considered the third best title shot. Mm-hmm. I'm not putting the Pistons there yet. I think that they still need one very clear thing that we've talked about, and I do not believe that one very clear thing is a healthy Jaden Ivey.
I would agree with that. I think so. I went into this thinking we have to talk about the Pistons, but it sort of can't be them, right? Especially if we're comparing it to Houston, that has the better net rating, that you would certainly still say has the more established stars in Şengün. I mean, you could say Cade is probably the best player on either of those two teams, right? That seems fair. He's better. I think I would take Cade over Şengün if we're drafting Rockets and Pistons collectively.
I just did actually. In something that's going to drop soon.
That's true.
So I guess the answer.
Why am I talking about this? You did it. But so Houston just has, I don't know, the track record. They have Kevin Durant, Amin Thompson. Everybody agrees is great. There's the defensive infrastructure, the size, the offensive rebounding advantages, and then if you dig into the numbers, to me there are almost more things. What you said maybe is where the conversation should start and finish is you need. Ivy's not solving it. You need someone in the Ivy spot that is way better than Jaden Ivey, secondary creator,
way better than
backup
LeVert,
point guard.
I would say too,
for sure, way better than LeVert.
What about Donis Jenkins though?
Well, he's legitimately good. It's he really is actually good.
I want to make this, and we did a long thing on the Pistons, and I know Pistons fans, a lot of them think nobody talks about their team. The Pistons absolutely look like a top 4 team in the East, but the third team most likely to win a title, I'm just saying they're one move away for me putting them in that discussion is all I'm trying to boil it down to.
I don't think that's crazy. I think I probably agree with you, but as I'm looking for stuff to flag, how are we separating Houston and Detroit? All right, I'm going to look at Houston's ridiculous 3-point shooting and say that's not sustaining, right? I'm definitely going to start there. They're number 1 in the league. the offensive rebounding, that's going to be there for the Rockets. The Pistons are number 3 in offensive rebound rate. Like, I don't think that's any less real. The Pistons, too, are 18th in three-point percentage. Now, that feels like, one, you could say, well, that'll get better. But two, like, I don't know, will it? Because of the personnel. So that's what you flag there. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, other than Detroit's maybe needing somebody in the Ivy spot that's better than Ivy, the Pistons, like, as part of all this paint dominance and rim stuff, they just foul the shit out of everybody. And they're the highest opponent free throw rate in the league. Houston has the lowest, and the difference is 10 more made free throws per 100 field goal attempts which is just like you're spotting 10. Like, that's just like, that's why you might circle back to Houston, is what I'm saying. Is like, even if you don't believe in the 3-point shooting, the points the Pistons give away by fouling so much is just like that. You can't continue to do that, especially if you don't address the Ivy spot.
I also give the edge to Houston because of Reed Shepherd. I know that this is going to sound painfully on brand, but no, hold on. What
if Reed Shepherd was on the Pistons? How would you feel about the Pistons?
I might pick the Pistons. Well, here's the actual thing. We both, coming into this season, we both probably would have identified these teams as having almost the same need. Maybe we might have viewed it in a higher urgency with Houston, to where I didn't know Alperen Sengun was going to bring the ball up the floor on basically every single possession. We thought it was going to have to be more of Ahmed Thompson doing that stuff, especially with Fred VanVleet injured. You have Alperen Sengun with this version of Alperen Sengun, excuse me. So you have Alperen Sengun and Cade Cunningham have the heads of your offensive snakes. To me, Reed Shepherd is the better second guy to come in, either score a bunch of points or initiate the offense, than anyone the Pistons have right now to do that. And he has proven that now. I think I'm not going to sit here and say, you could bench Sengun in the playoffs and Reed Shepherd will run things. Yeah. But we're trending in sort of that direction. And so I think their best second offensive player, I really think that Houston, one, has more options, because Kevin Durant, Ahmed Thompson, Reed Shepherd, they have the ability to, in my eyes, to play in a bunch of different ways offensively and to beat you a bunch of different ways offensively, where with Detroit, it is more likely to bog down and become Cade Cunningham needs to do literally everything. And like the defense and the toughness, the physicality, like all that stuff works in the regular season. It'll work in some playoff matchups, but you're going to need an audible offensively at some point. They're close. I feel like now we're demeaning the Pistons. The bigger insult we're throwing is, why aren't the Cavs just the answer here?
Well, so the reason I didn't focus on them is because I think the analysis is pretty quick, which is like, I don't know, they haven't been healthy this year. Garland's toe is a problem again. Like, but if you have all 4 of those guys there, and then like if Max Strus is like, if they could get their rotation healthy, it probably just is the Cavs. But you'd say, like, I don't know, man, they just, like you said, I'm not sure about them with physicality, and they're kind of defined by their playoff disappointments so far, at least with this group, and now there are reasons for that, but like an injury is a factor there. But like the analysis for Cleveland is quite a bit like more concise and maybe not that interesting. So that's part of it. But like I do think the way that Detroit and Houston have played, like other than the Rockets 3-point shooting, like none of this feels flimsy to me. Like, and that's not to say they're perfect. I think we've isolated what the issues are and what they might need. But I think if Cleveland enters the conversation, which it will if it gets healthy, neither of these two teams are leaving it. I don't think. I think what we've seen so far from Detroit and Houston is like, yeah, they should be in this conversation for sure.
Our final question, Grant, what should be contender has more reason to panic? And that would be the Warriors, the Timberwolves, or the Magic.
Man, I think it has to be the Warriors. Even though all their best lineups when everybody's healthy are still just crushing. Their most used starting lineup is like plus 19. Their top 4 most used lineups are all better than that. So it's just like, okay, when you get into the deep bench and the mix and match, or the old guys don't play, that's when it falls apart. So like the analysis from preseason to now is not that different, except like the team is 9-8 and has had some just dog shit losses, and Steph Curry will give you 46 and 49 in just like truly heroic nights, and then bookend that with like a 9-pointer and an 11-pointer. So Curry can still reach the heights, but it isn't an everyday thing, which is just how the aging curve works. So relative to the Timberwolves, who are like have kind of like both them and the Magic have very much righted the ship of the last 2 weeks or so. I think Minnesota's like 6-1, Orlando's 5-2, and Orlando's peripherals like 5th in defense, 15th in offense over the last couple of weeks are just like, yep, that's what the good version of Orlando's supposed to look like, right? Like there they are. It's harder to get like concerned about either of those two than it is with the Warriors, because they just like the bottom line results haven't been as good with Golden State, and we still haven't had a protracted Steph absence. He was sick for a couple games, but like the worst hasn't happened for Golden State yet. What do you think?
It has to be the age thing with like Steve Kerr's. He's done this before, so it's not now it's hurting the Warriors, so it's specific. But him saying the NBA season needs to be shorter is kind of this early is kind of a harbinger of we're fucking old and we're not going to have our best.
We're tired, man.
Yeah, we're tired, man. We're too old for this shit. That's what that rang like. It has to be the Warriors. Also because they play in the West, and so with Minnesota, it does feel like their offensive baseline is going to be super high. I am concerned about their defense, which is
it's
a little insane. Yeah, it's ball containment issues. Anthony Edwards waxing and win. Even he's been rough offensively recently, but you just know he'll normalize there. I actually think if we were to rank these, I'm still second most concerned about the Magic. Okay, great. They're 15th in offense. Great. Awesome. That's why you gave up 4 first-round picks to get where
that is right.
So I because now you're going to get expensive. You're out of moves. Jalen Suggs, I will say, the dials all go to 11 on that dude. It's fun to see him playing so well. So they're top end getting what they're getting out of Tristan Da Silva. Anthony Black is shooting 50% on step back threes. It's a small sample. He's looked good. So they have the talent, but they also feel like their margin for error is just as slim as the Warriors, but they play in the East. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's problematic to me. So their offense needs to, they're trying to play too, like they view these, it'll be like 1-on-3 in transition, and they're treating it like that's somehow an advantage. That's not what playing fast needs to mean. Like you can bring it back out when it's only 1-on-3. So, but it's the Warriors. They're just, because all the Kuminga stuff, the pod stuff, and I don't even know, because people keep saying, they're a team that needs to make a trade. And I'm like, so the goal is to shorten this rotation? Because you're not just trading Kuminga for 4 different guys. He doesn't make that much money.
I think, too, like the Warriors have now crept down to last in the league in turnovers, which is just always built in, but now it's getting kind of extreme. Turnover rate, I should say. I don't know what their raw total is. Do you think it's crazy to say, though, that like the absolute apex level of any of these 3 teams is still highest with the Warriors, but it's just like it's so fragile that like you might get it, you won't get it as frequently as you might with these other teams, and so that means the floor is higher for both Orlando and Minnesota.
Yeah, the floor is higher for those two. Yeah, you're right. That's the best way to frame it. The Warriors have the highest ceiling, and I guess when you look at their timeline, they are the ones that need to operate with the most urgency. Yeah. What's the ideal solve here? Is it an archetype of player that can come in and meaningfully change things? Or do you look at this as, well, this is we might just need more bodies issue. This isn't about getting a singular type of body.
Yeah, I think I don't know that it's not as easy as solving it with like, put this player in the rotation, because it's like the rotation when it's whole has dominated. So the solve is like, make these guys less old and make them able to play more. And it's just like, that isn't there. And so, you turn Kuminga and or Podziemski into something, I guess, and maybe that makes it so you don't have to lean as hard on the old guys. But actually, one solve would be Al Horford has been wildly inconsistent and has had some really terrible nights and might just be at an age where it's like, oh, it happened.
He's suffering from that Chris Paul arc. Last year, how good was Chris Paul? Starts every game for the Spurs. And it's happened this year.
It was gonna happen, and I'm not. It's too early to say it has officially happened and it's irreversible. But the early results have suggested that he's 39, so this is what it looks like.
One real quick thing that I didn't think it was going to be this bad, and I know it's still early, but them being a -7 when Jimmy Butler plays without Steph Curry defeats the point of having Jimmy Butler on this team. It doesn't defeat it, but you get what I'm saying. That was
the one principal benefit was that he would prop up those minutes, and you don't just give everything back when Steph's off the floor. Yeah, no, that's a huge issue. The turnovers are a huge issue. Kuminga, Podziemski not performing to expectations. I don't know what expectations were. Not performing is an issue. All foreseeable, right?
D'Anthony Melton's going to get healthy at some point, and everything will be solved.
I'll tell you what, if he looks good at all, Podziemski's minutes are going to get cut, buddy. Like, if he makes open threes and drives a little bit, just saying. Yeah, no, it's got to be the Warriors. But we knew that, right? We knew they were fragile.
Do you have a second, really quick, between Orlando and Minnie? Who are you more concerned about?
Oh, Orlando, yeah, just because the offense, I'm going to need to see a lot more from the offense to believe in it. And the silver lining might be that Orlando is a new coach away, except that that's a next year thing. You know, it's not, we've talked about how that won't solve it this year if the offense just continues to ebb and flow.
Are you ready to take us out of here, sir?
I am ready. Thanks, everybody, for listening, for watching. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe. Leave us a comment here. Give us some hype points if you're watching this on YouTube. We still don't know what those are, but we like them. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Join our Discord. Links for that in the YouTube and podcast description. Till next time. Shouts, Frank Lucchino. Apologies, Jared Allen.